Hey guys, it's Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Now, a few videos ago, I did a video on Akimtum in Spider 10 Hard, and I didn't go into my normal, usual, detailed self because the spider boss was bugged to hell. We didn't really know what they were going to fix. It took them 2 attempts in the end to actually finally fix the Spider Queen, and now it is fixed. I actually have the team running, and I have had to refine it a little bit, but it still works. So what I want to do in this video is actually give you a full breakdown of how you could go about building this team for your account and how you can use this team and what really are the major concerns around how, what the failure rate is, where can it be possibly a fail, and what we can do to mitigate that. So the champion that I am referring to from that video is, of course, Akimtum. He has this unique passive where once a poison activates on a single enemy, it has a chance to deal the same amount of damage to all enemies under Hex, and when you book it is a 100% chance. It creates a lot of damage, and it just so happens that a 5% poison on the Spider Queen with her 60% poison reduction passive, which is not visible in the game but it's there, happens to be around about 1 HP short of the actual Spiderling's full HP bar. So amongst other things, Hex obviously does a little bit of splash damage when you attack it. It basically means if a poison activates on the Queen, then all the Spiderlings are going to die. Now, in the last video, the bug was that the Spiderlings were doing twice the amount of damage. So the real question was, will it still survive once the Spiderlings are only dealing the exact 3% they're meant to be doing? And I can tell you it does. So we've had to make some adjustments and we've had to make some speed tuning. I'm going to show the run now, and then I'm going to break down exactly how it works, what speeds you require to make this work, and it will be quite surprising how you build this team. So we are using Ruel for our Hex champion, we are using Dark Kale as our poisoner, and we're also using Taurus for the weaken and the poisons, because there are a few things to note here. Weaken actually increases the amount of damage that the Spiderlings will deal to the Spider Queen. In addition, because of Ruel's unique passive, when a Hex target receives damage, they receive 10% more. So the Spiderlings will deal an additional 10% on top of their damage. So you get a multiplier of 1.25, another multiplier of 1.1, and that kind of mitigates some of the additional damage you need to have. We've also got Cold Heart here just to throw in an extra 10% damage. That's just to basically get us over the threshold we need to be able to kill the Spider Queen. Now, the thing with Heart 10 Spider, it's all about percentages, right? We can't really deal direct damage to the Queen in any sort of reasonable sense because of her defense numbers and her massive HP pool. So most of the time we're relying on maximum HP, poisons, or HP burn. All of that means percentages. So it means how much percentage of the damage can I deal to the Queen. So if you were running 5 max HP nukers that all hit the cap, then you would do 50% of the Queen. So you'd need some sort of reset. If you were running HP burn, then it's, okay, 10 Spiderlings take HP burn. That's about 2% because the HP burn does 3% damage. She heals for 1%. So you kind of have to go, okay, well, I could get 20% from the burn. I still need to find 80% from other sources. Now, in this team, we should be able to maximize just about the damage using that additional Cold Heart. We'll look at the exact percentages in the spreadsheet. But this is how the run is meant to go. We are using Akimtum to go second with the Hex, not the first. We're using Ruel as the main Hexer. So we put Poison Sensitivity and Poison out. We put a Weaken, we put a Hex. The first batch of Spiderlings die. That gets you to normally around about half HP. And then we just need to go rotate again. We put Ruel here to make sure we get all the Spiderlings spawn before we then go and dump out our second Hex with Akimtum. And then we put some more poisons out just in case any sort of weird activation happens with Dark Kale. And you can see it's about a 25 to 24 second run quite consistently unless you get a lot of 3%. So what speeds am I running for this team to work? So I've actually got mine slightly faster just because of the builds that I have them for different other pieces of content. But the base speeds that you need to run here are 118 for Akimtum. These speeds assume you're going to use Akimtum's aura, which makes sense. Gains you an extra 19% speed. We've got 227 for Taurus, 226 speed for Ruel, 228 speed for Dark Kale, and 117 speed for Cold Heart. Now, these are extremely slow. So, obviously, you need to keep in mind, if you want to build this team, these champions kind of get locked into this team. There are options for flexibility, which we'll cover after I've done this bit on the speed tune. but those might not be as desirable because you may not want to lock those champions into this speed tune. So the rotation that we've got going here is we need to have a champion go before Ruel takes a turn. That's because we want the final 2 spiderlings to summon and spawn, then we can hex. So you always want either Dark Kale or Taurus or Dark Kale to go before the Ruel. Now they can go a lot faster if you want them to, but just keep in mind if you put them really fast then they might take an extra turn, it's going to cost you more time. So I would stick to the minimums as much as possible. But it doesn't matter if you interchange Dark Kale and Taurus, as long as one of them goes before Ruel. So you kind of want to have Ruel going third. And the reason why that is the case is because the Spider Queen, when she depletes the turn meter fully, will place a sleep. So if Taurus was to go third, Taurus would be put asleep, which means he cannot then place the poisons on the second rotation. If it's Dark Kale is likely to be put to sleep, which means then you don't get that extra A1 activation to cover you for things like 3% and other things, which we will talk about in a little bit. So the ideal rotation is Ruel third because he gets around that by boosting his turn meter on his A3 by 50%, which means he always has enough turn meter to overcome the sleep issue. That's an important factor for the first rotation. We want Akimtum and Cold Heart to go super slow because we actually don't want them to take turns here. It'll slow us down and we don't need them to. So it's going to go, we're going to place the poison, we place the weaken. Weaken increases all of our damage output on those spiderlings by 25%. Then the hex, another 10%, plus we actually activate the Akimtum passive. And the Spider Queen is going to take a turn here, which means she's going to lose minus 30% HP, but it's going to be more than 30% because it's basically 30 times 1.25 times 1.1. So it basically varies a little bit. Then we're going to go and we'll take another turn. Ruel just default him to A1. You don't really want him to do any more damage. If he does an A1, it means your Cold Heart might have a little bit more threshold for the decreased defense. I've built my Cold Heart not to depend upon that decreased defense because not 100%. Dark Kale will just throw an A1 out. Now that could activate all the poisons, which is why we've gone the Taurus route here. Then we do Hex for Akimtum. Again, we want 2 champions, making sure they go before Akimtum because we need the spiderlings to spawn. So we need 2 spiderlings rotations on the second rotation. We need 1 on the first rotation. But really we need both Ruel and Dark Kale to go here. Then Akimtum's going to come in and he's going to hex. Then Taurus is going to come in and he's going to put his poison down, which basically means we're just increasing the amount of damage the Queen is going to take and guaranteeing that after Ruel is A1'd, we have still got poisons on the target. And finally, we just throw out a Cold Heart A3, just a 10% bonus damage, just to get that out of the way. Obviously, it'll be 10% capped. You can't really use a weaken here because it'll cap the damage, but it's just to get you over the threshold. And by that point, then, if everything has landed, the Queen is dead. Now, let's talk about what could go wrong. So there's always a risk in this game, unless it's guaranteed not to be resisted, that you 3% resist on things. So originally we were going to use Liburger over Dark Kale just because her animations are quicker to some extent. Now the problem we were finding with Liburger would be if she 3% too many poisons, then there is a high risk that she effectively doesn't land a poison on the first rotation and the team wipes. Dark Kale is a better alternative because essentially he places an extra poison on top of Liburger. So if you've got champions that can place more than 2 poisons, I think they're more desirable here than a champion that can place, say, 2 or less. It just reduces the risk. Now we've gone with Taurus. I did try Glazea originally. We tested the animation speeds of every single weakened champion in the game, and it came out that Taurus or Glazea were basically number 1, and I was using Glazea. Now the problem we were having here is now that we've got Dark Kale could activate poisons, which means there's a high risk that we don't have a poison on the Queen. So we needed a backup poison for rotation 2. So it was an easy decision then to drop Glazea for Taurus. But you could bring any weakener here with a poisoner, ideally. You could choose to drop different champions here, but I think these 2 are the best in slot because of the animation speed and time it takes. Ruel obviously is a preferred Hex champion here because he places the Hex, so it's a quick animation. He gives that 50% turn meter boost, which means that you can get around the sleep, but also his passive is really, really strong. It's well worth doing. Now, I have taken into account the fact that Ruel's passive will reduce any Hex target speed by 5%. So the Queen has a 5% debuff on her for the duration of this rotation, which is how we've got the speed tune working. And then, of course, when we get to rotation 2, all we're doing is we're just trying to mitigate the 3%. So having Dark Kale activating poisons means there's a chance we get a little bit of extra damage on the Queen, although poisons are not like amazingly high damage for the Queen. It is just helpful to have a little bit more damage. Obviously, Taurus dumping a bunch of poisons as well will get us over the line. So if we happen to have a 3% in a couple of situations, maybe one of the hexes don't land, the Spider Queen will heal a little bit. The poisons should mitigate that issue. Sometimes I've seen this run take like 40 seconds, but most of the time it's consistent 24 to 25. And as I said, Cold Heart is doing the A3. So how does this actually work out in terms of the damage rotation? So I mentioned earlier the percentages that you need to calculate in order to kill the Spider Queen. So what I've done here in what I would call napkin math is just calculate the estimated damage output from all of our abilities that deal damage to the Queen to determine if we have enough damage. So we know the Spider Queen starts with 14.797 million damage. So we can basically say, okay, one explosion of 10 Spiderlings is equal to 0.3 of the Spider Queen's HP, because there are 10 Spiderlings, they deal 3% HP, so it's 30% HP. We can multiply it with 1.1 and 1.25 for the Weaken and the Ruel passive. So Spiderlings will deal around about 6.1 million damage. Then we've got 3 poisons, which will deal 5% times sensitivity, so 1.25, times 0.4, because there is a 60% poison reduction passive on the Spider Queen boss. And then we times it with 3. So those 3 the poisons will deal around about 1.1 million. Then Cold Heart comes in and does a 10% max HP. We can't maximize, we can't increase that. That's fixed. That will deal another 1.47 million damage. So we're left with about 6.1 million damage after the Spiderlings and the Cold Heart and the 3 poisons have activated, which means we need another rotation, which means we're going to do another 6.1k, which happens to be the remaining amount of damage that the Spider Queen has. But of course, Taurus has dumped a load of poisons, so we have some opportunities to do a bit more damage to make sure the Queen is actually dead with some security. Dark Hail will activate a few poisons. So that is how we know 100% that this rotation can do enough damage. Then we just needed to find the speed tunes. And I just want to double confirm, because there was one slight number increase, that the base speeds for these champions using Aura from Akimtum is 118 for Akimtum, 228 for Taurus, 227 for Ruel, and 229 for Dark Hail, 117 for Cold Heart. Ruel needed one more speed on my calculator due to a input error. So those are the speeds you require, and it will work 100%. So the question you're all probably asking now is, are there any alternatives to these champions? Well, the Akimtum is kind of fixed in slot. You can't really swap him out. You could drop the Ruel passive. You will need to make sure that you do a few more extra speeds on all of your champions to make sure they still fall in the right rotation. And you do lose 10% extra damage, so you need to find 10% more on those poison explosions, which could be, you could throw in another Cold Heart. That would be absolutely fine. We just got ourselves a mythical piece here, which is probably not worth keeping, but we'll leave it there. Now, the Dark Hail is interchangeable with anyone that can do enough poisons. You could probably use a Theodore if you want to. I didn't use mine because I didn't want to lock him in here. Liburga could potentially work, but there is a risk of 3% to not get enough poisons out if she does a bad animation. You could also use something like a Venomage, something like an Urogrim. Basically, anyone that can do 3 poisons with the sensitivity is ideal. The new Supreme Kale is probably a great option. You could also then look to sub out Cold Heart with a Royal Guard if you wanted to. Could be a Septimus. Could be anyone you want. It could be an Omega if you can hit that 10%. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a max HP that caps at 10%. I just used Cold Heart here because I had a spare one lying around. And then finally, the 2 main champions here. Akimtum can't be swapped. Taurus, I think, is kind of locked in for the 3% risk. If you're willing to take a little bit of risk in terms of like this scenario happening here where we've missed a hex, you'll see she will heal. That Taurus guarantees that doesn't matter. It gives you a little bit of security because he just dumps out a bunch more poisons. You can use Glazea. You can use any weakened champion that has poisons as well, but these are the fastest animations. So you might find a champion that can do it, but it's a bit slower in terms of time because the animations are a little bit slower. Now, I am running on unlimited frame rates here, which is probably making this about 5 seconds quicker. So you can do that as well in the game settings. That's not cheating at all. That's going from 60 FPS to unlimited. So yeah, that is the exact speed tune in detail of how this works. It is currently working live after the bug fix. I have run it a number of times. I've tested the number. It is a pretty safe team to use. The neat thing about it is you don't have to manage the Spiderling's HP because they're all going to die consistently once the queen takes damage. So you never have to worry about healing beyond the fact that if you miss a hex because someone 3%, then she'll heal a little bit. That's why we've got all these extra poisons here to ensure that we always kill the queen. We've got a 6-star mythical. There you go, that could be a good piece. There you go, guys. That is the end of the video. Let me know what teams you are now running in Spider 10 hard. I know there is an Iggy, an Ignatius 10-second team out there. I'm sure there are Theodore teams out there, and I'm sure there are Sissia teams still running using the HP burn strat. But let me know what you are running. Let me know if this team is a team that you're also running as well, and if this video has helped you build out a new Spider 10 hard. I will be now working on some more Dragon and Ice Golem teams, and I have been monitoring the finite situation. A lot of the Krakens have been building some weird and wonderful teams with Valkyries and Martyrs, and I've even seen some crazy epic usages. So I've been keeping an eye, I've been getting messages from people. I haven't got beyond 7 yet, but I will get to it once I have some time after I've done Dragon and Ice Golem hard mode dungeons. But until then, I will catch you in the next video.